So over the weekend, I went to my first ever watch event. Generally, the event was amazing and I had a lot of fun. But I got scammed into buying this watch. Today I'll take you through my favourite watches from the event, a couple of new brands that really caught my attention, and how I got scammed into buying this random watch. Let's do it. So the event I attended was the Watch Pro Salon down in London. This was actually only my second ever time going down to the city of London, as it's a 4-hour trip from where I live up in Manchester. But as it's now my job to work with watches, I felt that it was important to go down and meet brand owners, enthusiasts, and well, just generally be a nerd for the weekend. But I didn't go alone. I went with fellow watch reviewer Jason the Watch Guy. We met down in London, we shared an apartment for the night, and we went to the event together. It was very nice having someone with me, it's just a big shame that it was a Scouser. No, but seriously, shout out to Jason, he's a top guy. And although he is a Scouser, he knows what he's talking about, so I'll leave his link in the description. Anyway, we got suited up and we headed to the event on the Friday night. The host of the event was the Londoner Hotel. Very posh. And of course, being the northern lads that we are, we quickly grabbed a couple of complimentary beers and we headed straight for the watch showroom. The first brand that we actually spoke to was Seiko. They had a Grand Seiko watchmaker that was telling us all about how he services the spring drive movements, how he repairs the watches, and just generally how the Seiko structure works. Super cool and super interesting. Next, we headed over to Duckworth Prestex, a British brand that I've covered here on the channel before. I met with the owner, Neil Duckworth, and we talked about his new up-and-coming dress watch release. And this new watch is absolutely beautiful, let me tell you. It's coming out in December, so keep an eye out for it. Then we headed over to Zodiac and spoke to Mike Pearson, who is the brand director of Zodiac watches. This was my first time handling various Zodiac models, and I was extremely impressed with the quality of their watches. And the final brand that we spoke to on the Friday was Elliott Brown. Again, a brand that I didn't really have much experience with. But Gemma, one of the brand representatives, explained the ethos behind the brand and let me get hands-on with a lot of the models. The designs didn't really speak to me, but I absolutely appreciate what they're trying to do. And just like that, the Friday event was over. We'd spent so long just talking to these few brands that the time had passed so quickly. So we headed into London town and went for a couple of beers in the local pubs. However, because we only spoke to a few brands on the Friday, it meant that we had a lot to speak to on the Saturday. Now I'll quickly just tell you a couple of my favourites from Saturday, otherwise we'll be here all day. And very soon I'll tell you about the watch that I got scammed into buying, so stay tuned. I got hands-on with this compressor watch by Sherpa, which had a true compressor case. This piece didn't have screw-down crowns but still had 200 meters of water resistance, which I thought was very cool. This piece by Zeitwinkel had an incredible dial that shone like the sun, and the in-house caliber was also beautiful to look at. Now the brand that I was most excited to speak to over the weekend was Yema. I'm a massive fan of this brand and I was really looking forward to getting hands-on with their newest models. Their new field watch was absolutely stunning, and the new sports watch with their new in-house micro rotor movement really blew me away. I handled this incredible new watch by Victorinox, which was like a field pilot dive watch hybrid. It was too big for my wrist, but it was a hell of a watch. And they also gave me a free Victorinox knife, so thanks very much for that. Now I tried to speak to the people at Zinn, but unfortunately they were the only brand that didn't want to speak to me. But this 104 model had an incredible sparkly green dial. The watch of the weekend for me was actually made by a brand new watch brand. Edward Christopher launched their very first watch at the event, and I was extremely impressed. This was a compressor diver with an integrated rubber strap. Now the next brand that I approached is where I bought the dodgy watch. This beautiful vintage style dress piece is by a brand called Van Brogg, which had an incredible custom rotor that was shaped like the Eiffel Tower. Now after looking at that watch, the guy told me that he was actually selling a special watch just for this event, and that's when he pulled out the watch that I purchased. Now first, I will say that this is only my opinion, and that this is just speculation from the research that I've done. Now the guy told me that this watch was limited edition to 100 pieces, and apparently the watch was only available to buy at the event over the weekend, which I really liked the idea idea of. I'm down here at my first ever watch event. Let me mark the occasion with a watch. And what better way to mark the occasion by buying a watch from an independent watchmaker that I've learned about just today. Now, he told me that this watch was made by the same watchmakers that make watches for the Van Brugge brand. He told me that the cases were from an old production, and instead of just throwing them in the bin, they decided to use them and make a watch out of it. And that's when he told me the specs of the watch. Because of course I wouldn't buy a watch if it had terrible specs. The watch comes with an automatic Miyota 8000 series movement. The domed crystal is made from sapphire and features anti-reflective coatings, and even though it is a pilot style watch, it features 100 meters of water resistance. The lume is pretty good on the dial too, which always helps, but the main standout feature was the case. Then he told me that the watch was only £250, and I thought, perfect, £250 is super affordable. I can afford to drop that right now on this watch and mark the occasion of this event. Now, the next part should have been a huge red flag, but I ignored it. The guy told me that I could only pay for this watch in cash, which I thought was extremely weird, because over the weekend in London, even these street buskers, you know, the dancers and singers, they have card machines that you can tip them with. And even the hotel that the event was hosted in was a multi-million-pound hotel. So if the guy knew that he was coming to the event to sell watches, why didn't he bring a card machine with him? But anyway, I thought, no, it doesn't matter. I'll go to the closest cash machine, I'll get out the £250 and I'll just buy the watch. So I ventured out of the hotel into the streets of London, very busy, very cold, very rainy, and walked around for about 15 minutes until I managed to find a cash machine. I then pulled out the £250 cash and headed back to the hotel. Now, because my business now revolves around watches, I needed a receipt for the purchase. For tax purposes, every time you spend money, you need to have a receipt so that you can prove what you spent it on. So the guy wrote me out a receipt and everything was good. I packed up my watch in my little free bag and I went home. And at this point, I was completely happy. The event was over, I got on the train home, the event was a complete success. But when I started to do a bit of digging into the watch that I'd bought, that's where things started to unravel. So I looked online for the Panther brand, which is the name of the watch on the dial. And you'd think that this watch would at least have a website or an Instagram page, something, right? Well, nope. Nothing. No Twitter, no LinkedIn, no Watch Crunch profile, nothing at all. This brand was a ghost. It just didn't exist. So I decided to do a reverse Google image search. This is where you can take a photo of something or download an image and you can search Google for an image that looks very similar. And this is a great way to find a watch if you don't know anything about it. And what was very strange is that I found somebody wearing the exact same watch that I had just bought. However, they bought it back in 2020, which I thought was extremely weird because I was told at the event that this was a limited edition model that was created specifically for this event. But I thought maybe the watch that I bought was just a reissue, which is nothing unusual in the watch world. But then I found some eBay listings, and that's what made everything clear as day. A seller on eBay had 20 of the watch that I'd just bought for sale, and these weren't second-hand either, these were all brand new watches. And funnily enough, they were actually cheaper than the price I paid for mine. I of course paid £250 in cash, and these ones on eBay were £200 brand new. So at this point I started to feel a little bit annoyed. I made the effort to walk around London in the rain to pay cash, and ended up paying more than the watch cost to buy online. But then I thought, hey, maybe the seller just got their hands on a batch of this watch, it is what it is, fine. But then when I took a closer look at the description in the eBay listing, it turns out that the seller is selling the watch with a NATO strap and a Tropic rubber strap, which just so happened to be the exact same straps that came with mine. So then it clicked, maybe this is the guy who sold me my watch. After all, they come with the same straps, and the description is very similar to what I was told at the event, and that would also explain why this seller on eBay has so many of them for sale. Then I found another listing for this watch, by the exact same seller, this time though selling it even cheaper. However, this listing stated that it was the last one for sale, and that listing ended a couple of months ago. So this is where things started to become a little bit shady. This was apparently a limited edition watch that was made exclusively to sell at this event, made from leftover cases by this mystery watchmaker. However, the exact same watch, exact same details, sold out just a couple months ago. Now this is where I started to become annoyed and feel like I'd been scammed. If this is the guy's eBay account who I bought the watch from at the event, why has he charged me more to buy the watch in person than he's charging on eBay. I mean, after eBay fees and delivery costs, he's made about an extra £100 selling the watch to me in person. Now listen, I'm a northerner. If there's one thing that we hate, it's getting ripped off. And the fact that I could have bought this exact watch for cheaper from the comfort of my own sofa is super annoying. And I feel like it's taken advantage of enthusiasts at events. Create some sort of FOMO about the watch. It's a limited edition, it's created specifically for this event. But it turns out that's not true. Then I remembered that I asked for a receipt. So I decided to take a closer look at the receipt. So I asked the guy to sign with his brand name, the watch that I'd bought, the price, and so on. And rather comically, even though he's there representing the Van Brogge brand, he'd signed the receipt Van Brugge. Who's Van Brugge? Have you forgot the name of the brand that you're there to represent? Or did you just misspell it on purpose so that it can't be linked back? Now I will say that I don't think that the Van Brogge brand has anything to do with this. I'm sure that the CEOs, the watchmakers, and the brand owners know nothing about this happening. And I'm sure if they did, they'd disapprove of this sort of behaviour. But the Van Brogge name was absolutely used to leverage some sort of authenticity around buying the watch. And, well, it worked. So let's break this down. I was told that this watch was limited edition just for this event. Not true. This watch had actually been in production for 3 years. The brand is a ghost online, absolutely no information, and the watch is readily available to buy on eBay, and there's plenty available. And the price being £250 in person is more than you pay online, and to be honest, paying cash is also a little bit dodgy too. And the receipt having the wrong brand name is just super sketchy and weird. Now the guy probably didn't know that I work in watch media, and he didn't know that I had the platform to make this video. Or maybe he thinks it's only £50, what's the issue? If that is his eBay account selling the watches for cheaper, then why would you charge me more in person? After all, I work in the watch media, and creating good relationships is very important. And well, I certainly will not be doing any work for these people going forward, and I'll definitely be doing a little bit more digging into this situation. Anyway, that's the story. Thankfully, it only cost me £250 and not thousands. And thankfully, because of my website, toptierticker.com, where you guys support me by buying my watches, I'll make the money back rather quickly. So if you do want to support me and the channel, then head over to toptierticker.com. I'll leave the link for it down in the description.